First, thanks. Can everybody hear me? Good. First, thanks very much to Dr. Ganem for inviting me to represent the non-religious perspective in this panel. I'd like to say that atheists are generally very uncomfortable with being told that our atheism is a religion. And for those of you who were here last year, or at St. Paul's last year, you may remember the analogy that we like to use. One of them is saying that atheism is religion is like saying that not collecting stamps is a hobby. Or saying that off is a TV channel. Members of the Center for Inquiry describe ourselves in a variety of different ways. Naturalists, rationalists, freethinkers, atheists, agnostics, humanists, sometimes all of the above simultaneously. But the key point is that our worldview works with a system of values and ethics that are based on empirical evidence and human reason. Our ethical approach includes the principles of fairness and justice, but tends not to prescribe any actions or behaviors that aren't harmful to other people. And also, our approach is informed by the fact that we believe that we have only one life to live, and that's our lives here on Earth. Now, studies of sociology and psychology tell us that humans are very good at finding patterns and categorizing everything we encounter. This has been a very good evolutionary strategy, which I would argue underlies our current success in populating the world, which may or may not be a good thing, and improving and enhancing our day-to-day lives, at least for those of us who are lucky enough to be the ones who are enhanced. However, there have been some very unfortunate byproducts of this, one of which is our human tendency to have socially constructed in-groups and out-groups. And most cases of violence and war depend on the ability for one group to dehumanize another group, so that the combatants will not be able to identify with those on the other side. They won't consider them as their fellow persons just like themselves. Unfortunately, in many cases, people who want to support war and violence have been able to call upon religion to bolster the justification for their attacks on others. Of course, humanity's history is full of examples of this, and many of which Professor Galtieri has cited and the other speakers as well. Starting from the massacres in the Hebrew Scriptures, through the Christian Crusades and Inquisitions, sectarian violence in India, Catholic versus Protestant conflicts in Ireland, and modern Islamic terrorism. And I'm sure I've left a pile out. War is usually a result of competition for limited resources. So our challenge is, the challenge of the combatants is, how do you justify why one's own group should have the resources as opposed to the other folks across the way? It's very convenient to be able to call in the backing of a supreme being for one's own side. Now, having recently myself been a religious person who was strongly committed to peace, I freely acknowledge that not all religions are inherently violent. Some are completely peaceful by doctrine. Quakerism as one example. Others have evolved to a point where many of the adherents are firmly committed to peace, as they've realized the errors committed by previous generations, and have resolved that they will correct them. But for all of us who value reason and intelligent discourse, whether we are religious or not, our worldview includes science and rationalism. Now, in addition, for those who are religious, their worldview is further informed by metaphysics and by reliance on authority. And generally this would include sacred texts, hierarchy, tradition, and revelation. And Professor Galtieri touched on those as well. Now, of course, there is general disagreement between religions and even among people in the same religion about how the metaphysics works, which are the right sacred texts, which authorities are valid. But all people of faith agree on the importance of and validity of the concepts in general. But for me, it all comes down to rationalism. Science and reason shows us why we are all the same, behind the clothes, under the skin, and beyond the dogma. Science also provides the only hope we have of finding the solutions to making the best of our limited resources, hopefully before we destroy each other or the world. People of all faiths and of none ought to be able to use the amazing brains we have evolved to figure out how to solve our problems. And I hope we can do it before it's too late.